What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Cocteau twins. And as always, thank you to Mr. Solo for providing a very large bounty of their catalog, as well as to Doug, who sent me the Treasure album. But yes, we're returning to the Tiny Dynamite EP for the last track. This is 1985, and in that regard, please do let me know, any and all of you out there, I know Mark's been commenting a lot, as to what the next EP or album would be, because in the larger folder I'm working from, I think they're organized alphabetically, so in the moment I wouldn't be sure what that is, but I will go to whatever the next step properly would be. And also shout out to Mark and a couple others, I think, who mentioned that the theme on this EP are butterflies and subspecies within, or within that genus, I guess would be the right term. In any case, so with that in mind, I'm guessing, is it Sultitan, Itan, or Itan? Yeah, Sultitan, Itan. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but I'm guessing this is a, what's the right word? Classification of a specific species, or at least some phrase related to the categorization of butterflies, or perhaps something in relation to their behavior or their anatomy or physiology. So yes, I won't spend too much time thinking about it, even if I do have a specific framing, meaning I am well aware that a lot of their lyrics are more phonetic or about the auditory qualities, and even when there are specific phrases, they can be more conceptual than spinning a specific narrative. But yes, with an idea that this probably relates to butterflies in some way, let's give it a listen. This is Cocteau Twins, the final track on the 1985 EP Tiny Dynamite, and it is Sultitan Itan. It's interesting. In many ways, or in multiple ways, what I just heard, it's very different from the Creatures album I'm going through right now. But in other ways, it's making me think of that because it has a bit of this tribal feel, maybe a bit more dreamy here, a bit less austere, a bit fuller and warmer. But there's these vocals that they're cavernous and echoic. There's phrases which I'm not sure exactly what they mean. There's this cyclical sound to it. So yes, I did a Creature's reaction in the same batch, and so maybe my mind is inclined to think that way. But as I was listening, I was thinking like, okay, Fraser's voice is different from Susie's voice, and this, as I said, has a lusher, more dreamy type of sound rather than a more austere and tribal sound. But there was some crossover as my brain interpreted it. But ultimately, I didn't really catch any of the lyrics, so I don't know if the title phrase was specifically used. I say that there was actually a word that I thought I heard early on that I was curious to hear, like if it came back again, but when it came, the line that I think led up to it came back again, it was a different word. God, it's annoying me, I can't remember what it was. Again, it was just a word, but it was a word that I was wondering how that might be relevant if I heard it correctly. I'll try to re-listen before I post this, and then I can put it in the description if I remember to do that. But, okay, so yes, I like those strummed, I think, guitar, which had a very, almost like island quality, maybe again part of why I'm thinking of a connection to the Feast album from the Creatures. But yeah, it had a like rich and light sound to it, but her vocals, Elizabeth, were very like shouty. They were, not, screaming or yelling, but they had this very intense shouting type of belt to them, and they were, I don't know, more intense than on some of her other tracks or some other tracks by them. Admittedly, the drums again, like in this one, they did sound more drum machine to me. Like, there was one, I think either on this EP, maybe the EP before this, where I was like, oh, like, so are they using natural drums now? And someone commented, no, still the drum machine here. Here, it sounded more like that. But some of the guitar, maybe the bass in this, it was reminding me a bit of The Cure, maybe not at their darkest, but not at their lightest either, somewhere in between. So again, I guess it's just the cycle of reactions I did in this batch where I'm hearing some cross-pollination. Nevertheless, there was a brightness to the tune, but also a slightly darker lower half of the track, and a bit of an intensity, which I think came largely from Elizabeth's vocal performance. So yeah, not having any idea what this may be about, if it is about something most specifically. But yes, another dreamy, compelling, a bit psychedelic, a bit transfixing tune from the Cocteau twins, which, I was thinking it actually sounded like some of her shouts were a spell, an incantation. Maybe not in the same way that it did on Garlands, where it felt like we were in the middle of a dark forest around a campfire, maybe trying to raise evil spirits, but it felt like there was some metaphysical purpose to the shouted vocals. And I did notice that I think it was like a ride cymbal that was just tapping away, so the percussion mixed with her chanting was maybe why it felt a bit like this cyclical incantation. But either way, it's very fitting to the rest of the EP and a lot of their work I've heard so far, even if I've heard stuff much darker than this and more dreamy and warm and enveloping than this. So yeah, ultimately, as I said, if folks would comment as to what the next EP chronologically, or maybe it's an album, I will go through that next. Thank you again to Mr. Solo for providing a great deal of music, not just the Cocteau twins, as well as again Doug for sending the Treasure album. So let me know what you think of this, and I will see you next time. Peace.